Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Goldfish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is actually Thursday, May 3rd. We usually do our country roads on Fridays. We're doing it on Thursday today. And as I just said, it's our weekly country roads with Winston Shrout. And we have Winston with us. Welcome, Winston. How are you today?
Well, doing pretty good. Just a little bit tired, but we'll make it through it.
Yeah, I know. I'm tired too. Felt like my head was being squashed like a watermelon. Um, today what I wanted to do right off the top was just screen share our new archive page for our viewers so you know where to go to find our other country roads. They're not all up yet, but it's a work in progress. So if you'd be patient with us, um, we will get them all up. Yes, I realize this is YouTube. Yes, I realize there is a risk they will delete this. Yes, I have another backup channel on BitChute by the same name. So we're doing one at a time. So give us some time to get everything uploaded. It's a very lengthy process. But as you can see, this is primarily our country roads here. And we have, of course, our unique special interviews, I would say, like with Rob Potter. We have our um, roundtables. It's all going to be uploaded here. We're waiting for lots of that. The POTUS reports. You can't access from this page. You have to go to our website to access them. But you can access them. But this is how it is. The minute I upload them, YouTube deletes them. So this is the only way I can do it. I have to unlist it, and then you can access it from our website. So that's how we're going to do it. That's just the archive page. That's not our current page. So sorry, folks, but you're going to have to go to two pages. But you can find your favorite Goldfish report on the archives and your current favorite Goldfish reports on our regular YouTube, our new YouTube channel. But this is what we had to go through. We just get through it. And sorry, you have to go to another site or maybe two other sites. But if you want our reports, that's what we have to do. Okay. And also I wanted to thank all of our patrons who contribute on Patreon, and also those who make contributions on PayPal. We do appreciate it. We do need your help. So we do appreciate your support, because this is viewer supported and we're doing this for you. So we're glad that you're all with us, and please subscribe to these channels so you can get notifications as soon as our videos are published. So having said that, we're going to talk about money today, which is a topic everybody wants to talk about. We're going to talk about, Winston has an article to share with us, and he's going to relate that to some current events that are going on. So I will hand this over to Winston. Thanks for waiting, Winston.
Okay, how's our sound? Is it okay?
Yep, sounds perfect. Sounds good to
All
me.
right. Well, like I say, we've been working pretty hard on some projects, that we're not willing to exactly share yet, but they are having a huge impact, as is evidence, from the things that we see. So, some of us get pretty wore down, especially a little bit down from the efforts and stuff. But like I say, we're doing this as a labor of love. So we depend on that love to energize us, and I think it has a really good effect. Anyway, today I wanted to discuss the topic of money, uh, because of what we're fixing to go into, and of course, when you start to look to the future as to how you'll conduct yourself, you need to look to the past to uh, uh, to get your bearings, so you're not just floating around on a sea of confusion. So I wanted to give a little bit of background, perhaps people haven't considered or heard of before, and then we want to start to project into current events as to what we are expecting to happen. So this is really important. So I'll just jump right into it, so I don't wear my strength out. Anyway, I wanted to screen share some articles. The first one here is actually a very, fairly old article. And it's, are we back on?
Yep.
Okay. All right, this is an article, I collected over time. It has to do with this fella, Sir Josiah Stamp. This is at the time he was the president of the Bank of England and the president of the English railway system. His directorates fill several pages of who's who. Anyway, in the late 1920s, in an informal talk to about 150 history, economics, and social science professors at the University of Texas, Josiah Stamp explained the following. Banking was conceived in iniquity and born in sin. Probably that's all he needs to say, but anyway, he goes on to explain a little bit what he means by it. He said, the bankers own the world. He said, take it away from them, but leave them the power to create money and control credit. And with a flick of the pen, they will create enough money to buy it back again. Take this power away from the bankers, and all great fortunes like mine. And then in parentheses, it says he was the second richest man in Great Britain. Anyway, he says, take this power away from bankers, and all great fortunes like mine will disappear. And they ought to disappear, for this world would be a happier and a better world to live in. My sons should not object. They are well educated and should be willing to take their places in the business world and forge their own fortunes. But if you want to continue to be the slaves of bankers and pay the cost of your own enslavement, then let the bankers continue to create money and control credit. However, as long as governments will legalize such things, a man is foolish not to be a banker. And this article was taken from an article called Legalized Crime and Banking by this S.W. Adams, who is a money analyst. All right, so this Josiah Stamp right here is just telling you. Now, he's a realist. I mean, he's saying, hey, it's just this way because we allow it to be that way. He said, take away the banker's power. He said it's going to be a whole different world. But what he points out here, as long as government will legalize such things, a man is foolish not to be a banker. Well, that's his philosophy, and but it points directly to the problem. The bankers control money and the issuance of credit, and that's why the government and the banks, go ballistic when the natural man or when the private man starts to create credit. I mean, they will come down hard on you for doing that. Trust me, I know. But anyway, this is just an interesting article. I can send it to you if you want. It's pretty famous. A lot of people have, put this up on websites and different things like that. So it's, very familiar to most of us who've been involved and studied these things over the years. Now, I wanted to go into another historical character, and that's the character known as Ayn Rand. Lately here on the circuit, if I can use that word, on the Ascension circuit or something like that, there's a fellow that's popped up. People keep asking me questions about him. His name is Jared Rand. And, it's interesting. I'll watch what I would call opportunists come onto the scene all of a sudden, and they come in with a big splash, and they get all kinds of publicity, stuff like that. And personally, I think, okay, who is this? Who is this party? Why are they here? Because he came on, and started talking about med bids. People got this. I mean, they got this group meditation thing going on and everything. And that's okay. It's none of my business. People ask me what do I think about it, and I said I'm not involved in it. There's a good reason why I don't get involved in things like that. But anyway, not to be critical of other people and their efforts and so forth, but when you see something happen, think about it for a little while. What is the impact? Why did this party all of a sudden show up? And we have these. I mean, it's not just this situation, but I see it popping up all the time in the community that we deal with. All of a sudden, somebody pop up and become a sensation immediately. Sometimes just because of their name. But anyway, so people need to be a little bit careful of that. But anyway, I wanted to go into a little bit of the history of Ayn Rand. I think some may be familiar. She wrote a couple of books that was quite popular, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. And they tell an interesting story, so forth. And she makes some very good points about different things. So I wanted to perhaps share a little bit of her history. People might not be aware of at this point. So let me just find that. Let's see, I think it's this one. Yeah. Okay, yeah, this is the article I wanted to show. We'll start out with a little bit of a biography of Ayn Rand, just so people know a little bit more about her. And again, this is somebody that had a philosophy, they believed in it, and they acted upon it. So I'm not finding any fault with that. Do I agree with all the philosophy that she had to put out? And I have to say, no, I don't. Some of us, in some areas, she made some very, very good points. But anyway, apparently, she was born in. Anyway, it talks about the popular novels, that she came out. So what she did, she fictionalized her philosophy into fictional novels. Like I say, the most famous, of course, is The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. It says these philosophical novels embodied themes she subsequently developed in nonfiction form in a series of essays and books written during the 1960s and 70s. Anyway, Anne was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, 1905, was raised in a middle-class family. As a child, she loved storytelling. At age 9, she decided to become a writer. And apparently she did pretty well in school, had a natural ability in mathematics, it says here. Now, again, it says her family was devastated by the Communist Revolution in 1917, both by the social upheavals that the revolution and the ensuing Civil War brought, and by her father's pharmacy being confiscated by the Soviets. So the family moved to the Crimea to recover financially and excuse me, to escape the harshness of life that the revolution, had brought. Anyway, it was in St. Petersburg where she attended university. At the university, she was concentrated studying on history, secondary focuses on philosophy and literature. At the university, she was repelled by the cough drop not working too good. Anyway, at the university, she was repelled by the dominance of communist ideas and strong armed tactics that suppressed, free inquiry and discussion. And basically, she was repelled by the communist thought process. It simply didn't vibrate with the frequency that she was operating on. Anyway, she had long been a student, of American history, became, somewhat enamored by the opportunities and so forth that she visualized, were there. And so eventually, and it goes through you can read this biography. I mean, this biography is all over the internet. Anyway, she finally arrived in New York City in 1926, and from New York traveled to Chicago. Spent 6 months there apparently. And anyway, she had decided to become a screenwriter, and so she received an extension on her visa, and she left for Hollywood. Anyway, on Rand's second day in Hollywood, an event occurred which was worthy of her fiction. She was spotted by Cecil B. DeMille, one of Hollywood's leading directors, while she was standing at the gate of his studio. She had recognized him as he was passing by in his car, and he had noticed her staring at him. He stopped to ask why she was staring, and Rand explained that she had recently arrived from Russia and that she had long been passionate about Hollywood movies and that she dreamed of being a screenwriter. At that time, DeMille was working on King of Kings and gave her a ride to his movie set, signed her on as an extra. During her second week at DeMille Studios, another significant event occurred. Rand met Frank O'Connor, a young actor, also working as an extra. So they were married in 1929 and stayed married for about 50 years until he died in 1979. And then Rand worked for DeMille as a reader of scripts and struggled financially while working on her own writing. She also held a variety of, non-writing jobs. Was able to sell her first screenplay, 1932, so forth and so on. Anyway, during this time, she'd been working on her first significant novel, which was called We the Living. Finished it in 33. And it talks a little bit about the gist of it, autobiographical of her novel. Its theme being the brutality of life under communist rule in Russia. See, she had suffered through that, her and her family. So she had firsthand accounts. She knew what it was. Anyway, there wasn't really a positive reaction, to her book, We the Living, at least at that time. So the next major project was Fountainhead, which she started working on in 35. The Fountainhead had to do with, ethical, focusing on individualist themes of independence and integrity. The novel's hero, Howard Rourke, is Rand's first embodiment of her ideal man, the man who lives on a principled and heroic scale of achievement. So you start to get the idea, of what her novels might embody. Now, whether you agree with the philosophy or not, she does stress being ethical, being moral, in what you do. In other words, if you believe it, live it. Now, you might not agree with how somebody believes or lives, stuff like that, but still the concept of integrity, morality, in whatever set of morals that you have. See, it's the same thing, that Jesus had talked about. He said, I would rather that you be either hot or cold, but if you're lukewarm, he said, I'll spit you out of my mouth. And so if you have a philosophy, if you have a dogma, and so forth, then you would need to be ethical and moral about it. And perhaps this is what appeals to people about, what Ayn Rand was writing about. Anyway, they had.
Yes, I'm on mute. Sorry. I was just commenting that versus someone who just goes with the flow and doesn't have
Yeah.
their own doesn't really have an identity or a set of principles that guide them, as a compass.
Yeah, you see, you can't hold a debate with a sheep.
Nope. They'll go along with whatever you say.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about critical thinking,
Hmm.
common sense, reason, and logic.
Right.
But you can't do that with another individuals if they're simply wishy-washy, lukewarm sheeple.
Cheap.
And so that's why, as part of our program, the things that we have tried to encourage people with our reports, and all these things that we do is number one, learn, study. And then once you have learned and studied, then start to apply it for self-empowerment. Now, like I say, I might not agree with you, but I will respect you if you stick by your ethics and your morals. And so that's the kind of people that we would like to be. And I think pretty much this is what Ayn Rand is trying to, put across in her novels was this concept. Now, she did get into, the concept of money, capitalism, all those kind of things. You may or may not agree with what she says, but the characters in her novels, have that integrity and so forth, that she's trying to put across. Anyway, Atlas Shrugged was her last, big novel, and then of course then she went into non-fictional type writing and stuff. But what I thought was kind of interesting was the thing I have here highlighted in yellow. Anyway, it says the Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, however, had attracted to Rand many readers who were strongly interested in the philosophical ideas the novels embodied and in pursuing them further. Among the earliest of those whom Rand became associated and who later became prominent was first off this Nathan Brandon and the economist Alan Greenspan, later the chairman of the Federal Reserve. So when you start to talk about Alan, a lot of people, I've heard people comment on the history of Alan Greenspan. At first when he arrived on the scene, everybody thought he was a kind of a constitutionalist, conservative kind of guy, and then he become the chairman of the Fed, and then it seemed everything changed. And I don't think anything changed. I think he was just waiting his opportunity. But anyway, you can, like I say, look at the history of what she was talking about, and then I have an article here about some of these things where she talks about money and her concept of it, and she makes some very, very good points. And of course, there's some other points I don't agree with. But anyway, I've highlighted some of the points I thought might be interesting to people.
Okay.
That they might find some value in. So she says, so you think that money is the root of all evil. See, I've heard this a lot. People will misquote what's in the New Testament. In the New Testament, it says the love of money is the root of all evil. And I keep hearing people misquoting that because they just say they just say money is the root of all evil. Right. But that's not true.
Right.
That's not what Jesus taught. He said it's the love of money. See, it's just like anything else. Is that people will start to worship an image. In other words, if you go through all, basically all the religions on the planet, they have all these symbols, they have all these images, they have statues, they have icons and everything, and people are worshiping the image.
False idols.
Yeah, which should point to God, but it's the same thing. When you start to talk about money itself, people start to worship the representation or the image of the value and not the value itself. And there's where the problem comes in. Because, again, it's the love of the money that's the root of the evil and not the money itself. This is a totally false misrepresentation of a true concept. And so people really need to get this sorted out. I keep hearing it all the time, and it just, when I hear people misquoting a correct principle, it kind of sends me a little bit ballistic sometimes, because they're quoting something and giving credibility to the quote by saying, well, Jesus said it, or Buddha said it, or whoever said it,
Mm.
but they didn't. You see what I mean? And so it gets a little bit irritating to me when I see that kind of thing. Anyway, so she says, so you think that money is the root of all evil. Have you ever asked, what is the root of money? See, so it's not the money itself that we should be concerned with, but how was the money created? Where did it come from? And you have to understand those things to see what the true value of money is. So she goes on and says, money is a tool of exchange, which can't exist unless there are goods produced and there are men able to produce them. Money is the material shape of the principle that men who wish to deal one with another must do so by trade and give value for value. Money is not the tool of the moochers who claim your product by tears, or the looters who take it from you by force.
The moochers like that.
Yeah.
It's a funny name.
She says, money is made possible only by men who produce. You see,
Mm-hmm.
and so in our economy and stuff, we have this problem with what's called derivatives, which are speculations, and we have, people keep, saying, look, Winston, look at the price of gold. Man, it's up over $1,000. It's over $2,000. It's going to go up to $10,000. I just say bullshit. Gold has the exact same value that it always did. What you're talking about is speculation and derivatives, of people who are speculating on the future. It's a gamble. It's a risk. It's just like playing poker. Any good poker player knows, if you have a good hand, how the techniques that you would use to get more and more money into the pot. And so it's the same thing with the stock exchange. It's the same thing with all these different things. What is the value of stocks or of gold or anything else? The only value is what created it, not what it was anticipated to be, or what effect it might have, because it's gone completely bonkers.
Yeah, that's why these initial IPOs come out and they go skyrocketing, and it's not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's not a realistic.
And
Some
this
of
new
these stocks.
cryptocurrency, like I say, that just drives me plumb crazy. It's the same scam.
Hmm. I think Putin is like outlawed it now.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. He sure.
President
I
Putin.
just read that today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if nothing else, at least me and Putin agree on that one.
Okay. Good.
Okay. So let's go on to some of the other concepts she brings out. She says those pieces of paper, which should really be gold, are a token of honor. Your claim upon the energy of men who produce. See, money in the form of gold or anything else is only a liability. That's all that it is. It's a liability for something of substance. And when you go back and study the colonial script, you'll see that. In other words, if a man produced a bushel of corn, he could issue a piece of paper to represent that corn for trade purposes. But when the bushel of corn was eaten up, what happened to the paper? It gone.
Yeah.
It had no value. And so in that case, the colonial script only represented something of real value, which if the real value was used up, then the paper became obsolete or no good. You see. He said, your wallet is your statement of hope. Of somewhere in the world around you, there are men who will not default on the moral principle that is the root of the money. You see? And so when you accept money in exchange for some labor you have performed, it's a gamble. Now, you remember we talked about trust.
Right.
Anytime the outcome is uncertain, what has been created? Trust. And so we operate totally on the trust system. That's exactly what you're saying there. She says, what's in your wallet is your statement of hope that somewhere in the world around you, there are men who will not default on the moral principle that is the root of money. You see? Uh-huh. Yeah, she makes some darn good points here in her analysis. Said it is not the strength of guns or muscles. Wealth is a product of man's capacity to think. Does it follow then that money made by the inventor of the motor is at the expense of others who invented nothing? Is money made by the intelligent at the expense of the fools, or by the able at the expense of the lazy? Money is made before it can be looted or mooched, by the effort of every honest man to the extent of his ability. See? And we're going to go into this later on in our presentation here. We're going to go into what's been going on with what we know as the revaluation of currencies and stuff to see how some of these things apply.
Right.
Anyway, here I've emphasized this one thing. It says, an honest man is one who knows that he can't consume more than he has produced. And this goes again to our commercial maxims, that the workman is worthy of his hire, that he can't be denied that. Anyway, this is, kind of an interesting article, and I'll send it to you if you want to put it up for people.
Sure, they'd like it. Another article to post.
Yeah, the money's only a tool. It will take you wherever you wish, but will not replace you as the driver. It will give you the means for the satisfaction of your desires, but will not provide you with the desire. Money is the scourge of men who attempt to reverse the law of causality, men who seek to replace the mind by seizing the products of the mind. You see? So she makes some, darn good points here. Okay, and then she gets into this concept here. And this actually goes a whole lot deeper than the short discussion she makes of it here. But only the man who does not need it is fit to inherit wealth. The man who would make his own fortune no matter where he started. If an heir is equal to his money, it serves him. If not, it destroys him. Now, we've talked about this in the past.
Yes, you have.
And so like I say, these are pretty good concepts. People might want to take a look at. She says money is a living power that dies without its root. Money will not serve the mind that cannot match it. These are things people need to think. And it talks about money as a means of survival. And like I say, I don't want to spend all our time on this particular article, but I'll send it to you if people want to, look through some of the different things. Okay, but here we'll get into this one here. The only substitute for gold money is the muzzle of the gun. Run for your life from anyone who tells you that money is evil. That sentence is the leper's bell of an approaching looter.
Ooh.
So long as men live together on earth and need means to deal with one another, their only substitute, if they abandon money, is the muzzle of the gun. Haven't we seen this?
Absolutely.
In 1933, when substance was taken out of use in our commerce and so forth, and they replaced it with paper, they enforced it with what? Guns,
Guns,
guns and
absolutely.
clubs.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Yep.
You know, I remember one time I'd listened to an interview on I don't know, YouTube or someplace with one of the pretty high officials in the IRS. You know, and after listening to him, you know, it became very obvious to me the IRS didn't care about the money. Their main concern was with control. And the fellow on the interview, in as much as said so, we're not worried about your money. All we're worried about is can we control you or not. And look how they have been used. Look how they have been used over the years. And I think Congress, you know, jumping on pretty hard about it now. I mean, you see quite a bit of information about how, you know, past administrations simply used the IRS to attack people.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh. And it didn't have anything to do with money. It had to do with attack. And how were they able to attack them? Because of the form of money that we use. You know, and this should be quite obvious to people who are studying into some of these things. Anyway, then she goes on, talks about some various things here. Okay, now look, she hasn't said money is the barometer of society's virtue. Do you want to know whether that day is coming? Watch money. Money is the barometer of society's virtue. When you see that trading is done not by consent but by compulsion, when you see that in order to produce, you need to obtain permission from men who produce nothing. When you see that money is flowing to those who deal not in goods but in favors, when you see that man get rich more easily by graft than by work, and your laws no longer protect you against them, but protect them against you, when you see corruption being rewarded and honestly becoming a self-sacrifice, then you will know that your society is doomed. And that's where we're at right now.
True.
And that's why all these corrections had to come into play, because otherwise, you know, society of the whole planet was lost. Okay. Anyway, paper money is a mortgage on on wealth that does not exist. And it says, whenever destroyers appear among men, and they start by destroying gold money, or it is man's protection and the base of moral existence. Destroyers seize gold and leave it to its owners, a counterfeit pile of paper. Isn't that what happened to us?
Well, we have fiat. That's right. Fiat made paper out of thin air, money out of thin air.
Now we're fixing to go into a hybrid.
Yep.
And that is United States notes
Treasury
and,
note.
and all these other currencies are advertised as being substance backed. But you can't take those instruments and redeem them in the substance that they claim is backing them.
Right.
So, you know, people don't need to think, that with the new United States notes and these other currencies and stuff, that we all of a sudden we have the second coming. It's just not so, but if properly operated, it could evolve into something better. And that's some of the points we'll bring up here in just a little while. Anyway, says whenever destroyers appear among men, they start by destroying gold money, for it is man's protection and the base of a moral existence. Destroyers seize gold and leave it to its owners, a counterfeit pile of paper. This kills all objective standards and delivers men into the arbitrary power of an arbitrary setter of values. Gold is an objective value, an equivalent of wealth produced. Paper money is mortgage. Remember mortgage, death pledge, paper money is mortgage on wealth that does not exist, backed by guns aimed at those who are expected to produce. Paper money is a check drawn by legal looters upon an account which is not theirs, upon the virtue of the victims. Watch for the day when it bounces, marked account overdrawn.
Mm.
When you have made evil the means of survival, do not expect men to remain good. See, this, if nothing else, this is an essay on morality.
Sure.
And she's just using the concept of money and gold and all these other things to demonstrate morality and or immorality.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if there's anything else here I wanted to really hammer. Okay. Now, again, she came from Russia. She had studied American history, and apparently she was impressed by it. So at some point, she came to America, and then that little short biography we had, where she got into the movies and started writing novels, screenplays, and different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, she says that if you asked me to name the proudest distinction of Americans, I would choose, because it contains all the others, the fact that they were the people who created the phrase to make money. Make it.
Mm-hmm.
Create it. No other language or nation has ever used this combination of words before. Men have always thought of wealth as a static quantity to be seized, begged, inherited, shared, looted, or obtained as a favor. Americans were the first to understand that wealth must be created. Now, I want to define this word "create"
Mm-hmm.
because we find it, in our theologies and Book of Genesis. God created the world and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Create does not mean to make something from nothing. It means to organize something.
Right.
And so when it says that God created the earth, for instance, did this all of a sudden appear out of thin air? No,
Right.
no.
Right.
God organized existing material.
Exactly.
And when he created man, when he created woman, he took from things that were available, organized them into a living entity. So the word creation does not mean something made out of nothing.
Right.
It means to organize things that exist. And so apparently Ayn Rand was impressed with the philosophy that was in America at that time,
Mm-hmm.
during the 20s, 30s, during that period of time, because she said the Americans were the first to understand that wealth must be created. See? So this is an important concept. So like I say, I like some of her points here. And then she says, until and unless you discover that money is the root of all good, you ask for your own destruction. When money ceases to be the tool by which men deal with one another, men become the tools of men. Blood, whips, and guns, or gold. Take your choice. There is no other. And your time is running out. Yeah, so time has run out. And that's why we're having to make taking the measures that we have.
Mm.
Okay, any questions or comments about any of that?
No, but even just those excerpts, you can definitely see how she, weaves her art she's very crafty
Yeah.
at her writing. Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
how she gets that's the hardest part for writers, is really how to get into that, how to understand something without it being spelled out for you, literally.
Yeah.
How to kind of experience it, if I could say it that way, Winston. How
Mm-hmm.
to understand it on a deeper, like more subconscious level, or And that's, I
Yeah, if
think
you,
she did that. I think she could
yeah,
do
if you
right.
read her fictional novels,
Hmm.
she has the hero,
Hmm.
and the hero is basically a capitalist,
Hmm.
and then the protagonist, the system or the government, is simply trying to take his money away from him on the basis that he didn't have the right to make that much money.
Mm.
And his position is, well, I made it. Why are you sticking your nose into my business?
Wow. Wow. Hmm.
That's
Hero.
pretty much the hero. Excuse me for a minute here.
Their book. Well, it's definitely she's definitely an author. I think people should look into, because these are really great concepts, and it looks like she's also a very good writer. So it looks like she really has a very a talent in writing. In fact, it looks like, and getting these points across. You know, you're still muted. You're still muted. You're still muted. Can't hear a word you're saying, Winston. You're still muted.
Oops,
So
I'm sorry.
okay, it's okay.
Anyway, what I was saying was, that I might not agree with her in all points,
Right.
but certainly the points she brings up there, or that I thought was,
Right.
significant, that
Mm.
I wanted to bring out. Very good points. And so again, there was only one perfect man, and he was misquoted all the time. The rest of us fall way short of that.
Mm.
For instance, am I right in everything that I say? Uh-uh.
Yeah.
No.
But this is along your philosophy. I mean, you've said all along, and you're very consistent. And this isn't it. You're living the example you're talking about. Do you always have stressed you have to earn it. You have to put your sweat, blood, sweat, and
Yeah.
tears into your work, and that's your value, is your work. And
Yeah.
she's echoing the same kind of principles, that you have to earn it. You have to earn that
Yeah.
money, and you have to feel like, and then you feel like you've earned that money, just like what you just said. The man said, I earned it. Why can't you just butt out of my business? He knew he earned it. So, you know,
Yeah. Again, he had, according to the storyline, I forgot what was the name, Jack or something like that.
mm,
Anyway, he had developed through his own initiative a harder steel
mm,
than was presently available, and this steel was highly prized by the railroad industry.
mm,
And so he was making money based on his concept, and also the steel that he produced, for the railroads or for building,
mm.
for girders and all that kind of stuff. He had a better product. And so the ones who could not produce that level of product were trying to pull him down. You remember another example of this?
Well, that's,
I've never seen one, but after World War II, there was a fellow called Tucker,
mm,
and he built a car.
mm.
It's called the Tucker.
No surprise.
Kind
No
of looked
surprise.
like one of the old, yeah. It's kind of, if you ever saw one, it kind of looked like the old Studebaker,
Uh-huh.
the sweet potato torpedo looking thing.
Uh-huh.
But the innovations that he had put into the Tucker were far superior to what General Motors, and Dodge, and Ford, and everybody was doing. So what do you think they did to him?
Same thing they did to Nikola
They put
Tesla.
him out of business to make sure his innovations were not incorporated into the automotive industry. Yeah, there was an
Well,
interesting movie some years ago. I think maybe Dennis Quaid or somebody played Tucker,
oh, okay. Interesting.
and he had started out in World War II as a manufacturer, I think, of turrets, for tanks and things like that.
Mm,
And then, after the war was over with, then, when automotive production cranked back up, and he thought, well, I'll just go to manufacturing automobiles. And he started to incorporate, for instance, when, one of his innovation was the headlight system
mm.
would revolve according to the steering wheel. And so if you stirred in a certain direction, The headlights were turned that way.
Like eyeballs.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. You know, he had a lot of good ideas about how to make things better. And then the big three, the big automotive industry, saw that he had a better product, and
Oh man.
and they should have supported him or incorporated it into. But you understand that the automotive industry, it was based upon redundancy.
Mm,
And let me explain what redundancy is. As an example, in a gasoline engine,
mm.
how much of the gasoline that actually goes into the engine is actually burned?
I have no
Okay,
idea.
let's just say 50%, although it's lower than that. But let's just say 50% of the gasoline is actually burned, which causes pollution. Why do you think we have catalytic converters as reburners?
Mm-hmm.
But why is only 50% of the gasoline burned? What's the other 50% doing? It's cooling the engine. That's all it's doing. It's redundant.
Mm,
The gasoline engines are redundant. Now, a fellow I met up in Utah, he had solved that problem, and that was he had created a head. You know, if you know anything about engines, and maybe you don't. But anyway, he had created a head with an extra cylinder in it with another piston. And what would happen is when the gasoline would be introduced, the spark plug would go off. It would drive the one piston down, but it would drive the other piston up, which created a much larger expansion area for the gas, because only gas burns. Gasoline don't burn. Gas burns. You have to convert gasoline into a gas in order for it to ignite and to explode. So what he had done, you have one cylinder down here. He built another cylinder on top of it with a piston, so that when the spark plug went off, the available area for expansion for the gasoline into gas was at least doubled. And guess what?
and you got more mileage out of the car.
Oh, oh, he estimated that he was getting about 3 or 4 times the horsepower
Mm,
that would normally come from that motor.
mm,
And because he burned all of the gasoline,
mm. There
there were
wasn't as
no
much
emissions.
pollution. Yeah, no emissions. Holy cow.
Did not need catalytic converters.
Mm.
And he tried and tried. I mean, I've worked with him a little bit. And I thought, well, man, I don't know. If we push this too far, somebody's going to get a bullet in the head. Because he had, taken his invention to some of the big, concerns and stuff and tried to promote it. And if they had have taken it up, they'd have put it on the shelf. It would never have gone into production. Because again, the automotive industry is all about redundancy. As another example of it, one of my own children, he was working with a conversion of LP gas into engines and stuff, and then he started to develop the same concept into diesel engines, and he had developed, uh, he did it himself. In order to make his system work, he had to create a mini computer and a computer program to regulate the amount of natural gas that went into the diesel as it went into the engine. He developed that all himself, and he was getting, easily he was getting. I'm talking about big rigs now. I'm talking
Mm,
about the semis that go up and down the highway.
mm.
He was able to produce a 30% increase in mileage.
Oh,
And
folks, we're
so,
being
so
fleeced. We're being
well,
fleeced.
so he started to
Invented
advertise it
it.
around and stuff like that. And sure enough, one of the great big transport companies, I won't name them, but about 1 out of 8 trucks, semis you see on the highway belongs to this company. I'll put it that way. One of the big ones. And they became interested in it, and so they got into a deal with him on his invention.
Mhm.
And I almost begged him, let me get involved with you on this. I knew what was fixing to happen.
Mm.
I've seen it so many times. But he got lawyers, and they got patents and they got contracts and all this kind of stuff. And so the contracts were let out, and this big company was going to start to produce this thing and put it into their semis and all these kind of things. And guess what they did?
They took it over.
Uh-huh.
And they
Well,
killed it.
the way they took it over was they sued him on the contracts, on the patents. And to this date, and this has got to be, 6 or 8 years ago that he did this. And there's still not a single one of those on any semi on the highway. It's not about productivity. It's not about what Ayn Rand was saying about the power of the mind creating something of a substantial nature to improve things.
Yeah.
It's about redundancy. Why do you think your automobiles wear out? They're designed to wear out.
That's right.
And these new models that come out, I just look up and down the highway all the time. It just sends me into absolute fit. Because I see the foreign imports are nothing but tin cans and plastic. They're built to wear out in a short time. These little old 4-cylinder engines. Okay, don't get me all. Okay, I'm going to stop.
All right, don't get worked up. Don't get riled up. Winston's getting riled. He's getting riled up. All right, we got it.
Yeah, because again, I know the system and how it works, and it's all about redundancy. Yeah. Just look at your computers you're using.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I'll get off that. But again,
look, they did it to Tesla. They did it to the guy that invented the Stirling engine, which is, they did it to a lot of people that invented, water engines that run on water. You can't get these projects off the ground. And it's
terrible,
I
know.
It kills innovation. And, it's too bad that we've accepted and allowed this tyranny. We've allowed it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Ayn Rand was pointing out.
Right.
When you go to paper instead of substance money, then all of a sudden, the enforcement of it is out the muzzle of a gun. And people who invent these things and try to put them out, they get bullets. We've had a lot of, and not just in inventions. How many naturopathic or whatever you call them, doctors have been killed? It's in the news. We see it on the internet all the time.
The numbers are in the 80s now, I think.
Yeah.
Last count.
They're murdering these doctors by Big Pharma to prevent them from bringing things to people's attention that would be for their betterment. And so we have to be real careful, and we're hoping. I had heard a rumor that this week sometime, so far it hadn't happened, but Trump was going to get on the news and so forth and announce some of these energy saving devices, free energy stuff. So far he hadn't. That was the rumor, and I guess either he hadn't gotten around to it or he's not going to do it. But I know he's after him because you recall, I don't know, it's been 2 or 3 months ago, there was a list of about 100 or 200 CEOs and people that have resigned because of what Trump was doing. And there was probably, a high percentage, not a high percentage, but maybe 10 or 15% of the people worked at the patent office.
Yes, huge amounts. I saw that. We talked about that on a POTUS. There was more than, people. It's not a coincidence. There is quite a large number of people at the patent office who were on that list of indictments.
Or people who had resigned.
Or I'm sorry, people who had resigned. Or
the reason they resigned because no doubt they figured out they were on the indictment.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. I'm sorry, it was a Freudian slip. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's why we're so concerned with moving things forward. Well, let's move forward just a little bit more.
All right.
I wanted to emphasize one thing, and then we're going to go into a little bit of our present, current events in regards to some of these things. Again, some time ago, I had written an article. It's appeared several places on the internet. And I wrote it to explain the money system we're going into. And I'll explain more of that when I get into the current events and how we've come to the place that we're at right now.
Mm.
But the reason I wrote that article is so that people would understand when they see some of these things happening,
Mm.
just realize that it's for a good cause. Because we do presently have a two-tiered money system,
Mm.
whereas formerly we had a one-tier money system, and the problem that it caused
Right.
was that the people had to compete
Mm-hmm.
with the government
Right.
for the available money.
Mm.
And guess who won that competition?
Sadly, we know.
The party with the guns.
That's right.
That's
That's
who
why they're
won it.
trying to take our guns, people. Don't
Well, it
do
has
it.
something to do. But I'm just saying that
Well,
in
at this
order
point,
to excuse me for a minute.
it's that chemtrail cough. Poor Winston. Do you know we have
Yeah,
that official report? Richie from Boston, another YouTuber, shared a video of an actress going into a another truther going into a doctor's office, and the doctor said, "This is known in the medical community as chemtrail cough. This is from the particulates they're spraying in those fake airplanes way, way high up in altitude." I just, the sky just looks like fiberglass now. That's all it looks like. But go ahead.
yeah, it's kind of interesting when I watch different TV, productions and stuff like that, movies, whatnot. Where they have a outside scene and stuff. I always look at the sky to see if there's any chemtrails in their movie, and most of them do have them.
Holy cow.
You can see the somehow they can't get it out of Earth, they even care to. But I was watching a program the other day. It was about this sheriff in Wyoming and all this kind of
Mm.
thing. The program called Longmire. Heck of a good program. But anyway, Wyoming, is wide open spaces and everything. So they had all these outdoor scenes and stuff. So I'm always looking at the sky over Wyoming to see if there's any chemtrails in this program, and there are.
Well, interesting
Now,
though, but I did do some research on it. I don't know how accurate this is, but I do have testimony from someone who worked in I guess the EPA, who was like a whistleblower and did come out and say they started this program back in the 70s, and they would literally take children outside during the playground time and point to them, and and explain to them that these are good things, and so that it would condition children to like not pay attention, to get used to it. This is how insidious and sickening these
yeah,
people are, folks, and we have to stop allowing it. So
yeah.
wake up.
I forgot what law it was, but they passed a law that the military could experiment on people. I mean, I can't remember all the details of that, but not only the military, but like I say,
They do with their electromagnetic
yeah,
frequency and weapons.
uh,
Absolutely, we've
or
talked about that.
chemicals, putting stuff in the
Chemicals.
water.
Well, the
Like I
MK
say,
Ultra. Look, there's a Congress. I have it posted on the Goldfish Report
uh-huh,
website. It's on the website, www.thegoldfishreport.com. It's called the Aquarius Group briefing, and it talks about
yeah,
exactly what you're talking about. Talks about how they experimented unwittingly, on people unwittingly with LSD and other things, and of course, who knows?
yeah,
God knows what else they're doing. So, but we're allowing it because the same principle we're talking about. You have to inform yourself. You have to. Who cares if someone wants to call you a know-it-all? You need to today, because it's called tacit consent. If you don't know, the information is out there. It's an information, overload. It's almost hard and almost impossible sometimes to even know the information exists. As
yeah,
Winston, all the information you share with our viewers on Goldfish Report, it's like, I don't know where you get all this from, but you did spend many, many, many years researching, and research is a process. It's like a maze. You have no idea where it's going to take you. It's not something you systematically knew where you were going to go. Who knew where you would go? Once you get one document, it leads you to researching other documents that, it's just a long,
yeah,
it's a long dynamic process. So it's something we have to all be aware of, and just, stop consenting to this. It's all basically.
yeah. That's pretty much how we've had to do solutions in commerce. I liken it to walking through a minefield. And that is, you take a few steps, and if it don't blow up, then you continue on. But if you hit a spot that blows up, then you back up and go a different way. And so there's people say, what book did you read to find all this? I didn't read a book.
I know.
We just went out and tried something, and if it worked okay, we said, okay, that was good. And if if it blows up, then we back up and do it differently. That's how we've learned how to do all this stuff.
Minefields.
Yeah, I'm not a. Trust me, I'm not a brilliant researcher. I'm not a brilliant thinker or anything like that. I'm boots on the ground.
You are.
I'm just walking out through a minefield to see what happens.
Yeah, but your thinking is far out. Go ahead. It's far.
Sometimes
it's far out there.
Yeah, sometimes
You've educated so many people, Winston, who would never have even known about this. So
yeah, it might be considered unusual because people don't usually think that way. Like I say, when I look at, for instance, the New Testament, I might see something differently than other people might see.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, I went to all that trouble to build that model, as I understood the different, pieces of that model.
Mm-hmm.
Now that was unusual only in the sense that other people had not seen it, up to that point. That's okay. I mean, I got nothing against, anybody. But anyway, let's get along. I was going to share more about the two-tiered money system, but we'll get into that. But the point I wanted to make with it was that when we have this system, then the people will no longer have to compete with the government for the available money.
Yes.
That's my point. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I want to now move into a little bit of history, to bring us up to our present time. Now, we've talked about, a little bit of this in the past, but like I say, it'd be good because we're on the cusp of some major changes. It would be good to review some of these things in the sense that people simply need to know how we got to where we're at. That's what we need. Hold a minute. I need to close the blinds.
Yeah, you've got some bright sun there. Yeah, go ahead. I'll put this on pause. Go ahead.
Okay. So we want to take a look at a few of the events which have led up to the things that we see unfolding. Actually day by day and week by week in our present commerce and in our changes in the money system and so forth. Now, the ones who had controlled the old system, and people call them the cabal or whoever, whatever you want to call them. But anyway, the ones who had controlled the system, monetary system, the banking and everything, up to a certain point, are fighting against it. But really, they're struggling at this point for survival. And I'll have to say that not everything that's being done by the resistance, if you want to call it that, is exactly what I would call morally ethical. But it's what we have, so that's just what we're dealing with. And so again, what people really need to consider is, what are your ethics? What moral principles do you live by? That's what we really need to consider. Because when you say, well, to what extent did I participate in the old system, and to what extent will I participate in the new system? Neither of which are a perfect system, but it's what we have to deal with. And so don't it make real good sense to understand what that system is? Because what's happening right now is only an interim step to where we're going. It's an interim step. And so it's part of the nation of people who have been duped for generations. You can't spring on them something that is way beyond their ability to comprehend it. It's not fair to them. It's not fair. So this, what we're going into with this new United States notes and gold-backed currencies and all these kind of things. Is that perfection? No, it's not. But it's necessary to get us to where we're trying to get to in what we call ascension, where we get into a higher vibrational frequency. Can you go there right now if you choose to? The answer, yeah, you can. Will you? Probably not. It might take just a little bit more, prodding and stuff like that, a little bit more development so that people can make those, changes. But it couldn't change. I mean, we could not make the ascension into a higher dimensional vibrational frequency with what we had.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, I did a couple of those seminars up at the East Eddy Ranch, the subject of which was removing commercial karma.
Mm.
Because you can't leave a system as long as you have liabilities within that system. You can't expatriate from a system and leave behind a debt. And so that's why I spent so much time, going over, what can be done. That's what Solutions in Commerce has been about, is removing debt, removing commercial karma, because you can pray and meditate and do all kinds of things, but if you have a hook in you, the hook being called debt,
Mm.
if you have a hook in you, you're not ascending any place.
Mm.
And so that's why I've stressed, it's been kind of one of my main concerns, one of my missions is to explain these things and to show people how to go to that zero balance that we had talked about. And so the different techniques and procedures and stuff that we have developed at Solutions in Commerce is for that purpose. And then the recommendation is, don't do that no more. The old famous joke, I love this joke, guy went to the doctor and said, "Doc, every time I do this, it hurts." The doctor said, "Well, don't do that no more." And so it's the same thing with people, using debt as a functional way of life.
Not functional. It's a
Don't do that
dysfunctional.
no more.
It's a dysfunctional way of life, you mean?
Yeah. And as I mentioned last time, I had talked about debt currency as being an opium. It's a drug. Yep. And so for the next little while, people who don't realize that, people who have become addicted to debt, when they get to the point where they can't do that anymore, they're going to have withdrawal symptoms, because it's an addiction. It's an opiate. And so we have to be very careful, in our families, in our communities, and the people we associate with, that if we see withdrawal symptoms, we need to be prepared to explain and to assist. That's what we need to do. And so we do that through knowledge, through enlightenment, and all those kind of things, because most of the people that we deal with out here in our little, circle of influence and stuff, they don't know what you know. They haven't been exposed to it yet. That's why, I keep saying, be prepared with knowledge, with a little bit of experience, so that when the opportunity comes up, and it will come up, to help people over some of these hurdles, that's going to be caused by withdrawal symptoms. Yeah, it will happen. So anyway, that's why we try to, do these reports. We try to emphasize, certain things, again and again and again and again. Hopefully so that we can have a smoother transition. Look, folks, we're going to transition. The only question is, how many bumps are we going to hit in that transition? And if you're prepared with knowledge, experience, and all these kind of things, we can make these bumps ever so easier to get over. That's my point. And so that's why we, with Goldfish and Country Roads and all these Solutions in Commerce, That's what we try to do, is get people, so they can understand some of these things, to smooth out the highway a little bit. That's all we're trying to do. But let's go back into, because I want to, bring people up to the introduction of the United States notes and the effect that it will have. I keep hearing, a lot of commentators talking about the various things. So let me go back to basically to the days of Eisenhower. Well, actually, you can go all the way back to the Civil War. But at some point, now in Eisenhower's case, he's the one that set up the thing that Randy Kramer was involved in with the United States Marine Corps Special Section, because they have this mandate as well. Now, they do it a little bit differently than the earthbound military have done it, but we'll explain here in a moment. But these things were anticipated and prepared for. All the way, if you want to go back to Eisenhower or whoever, but it's the same thought process, and that is, if the United States ever gets to the point where it's in danger of failing, then it would be the duty of the military to step forward. And they have. Okay, so with that background and that thought in mind, like I said, just give a short history of how we've gotten to where we're at today. Perhaps about 7 or 8 years ago at this point, I can't remember exactly when. Actually, maybe longer than that. Anyway, somewhere around 2003 or 2004, somewhere in that period of time, I had made an acquaintance and a friendship with an individual who had previously been very, very high in the CIA. So he was knowledgeable. And he had told me that the U.S. military had set up a functional republic government, and they were stationed in West Virginia. Now, where, I don't know. He said West Virginia. Other commentators had said Virginia. Either way, this was a military function, and they had set up a completely functional republic. Now, does it have all the trappings that we had in our republic as we suppose? I don't know. In other words, did they have, executive and judicial and legislative branches? I don't know. Do they have a constitution different than the one we have? I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see how that works out. But anyway, they had a fully functional republic set up in West Virginia, as I suppose, in preparation. Now, if you'll go back to Jerome Corsi, and he recently put out, and I think several people have listened to him, he said some few years ago, the U.S. military was fixing to do a military coup because Obama was fixing to destroy the country. And the mandate that the military had was, if this ever occurs, they're to step forward. So they were fully prepared with guns to step forward with a military coup and save the country. And they already had a republic in place, functioning. And then, according to Jerome Corsi, he says he has some firsthand knowledge about this, apparently, that Donald Trump intervened with him and said, hey, if you won't do that, he said, if we go through the process and I can get in as the president, we can set out the military coup. That was the deal. And so was Hillary ever going to be the president? Not on your life. Not on your life. like I've said before, the last elected president we had was John F. Kennedy. Ever since then, our president has been selected
Mm-hmm.
by some higher authority. And so the election process has been basically a scam because it was already determined who was going to be the president by the powers that be, whether it was the cabal or whether it was other things such as the U.S. military. Our administration at that level has been selected, regardless of how you voted, folks. How does that make you feel? But anyway, not to get into that.
Mm.
So this republic started to function in January
Mm-hmm.
of 2015. Now, where the front office was or where they were operating from, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they were in Washington D.C.
The swamp.
Yeah, because again of the energy that's there for one thing.
Yeah.
Now, when they started to function, I mean, it was with international concern
Mm-hmm.
because when they came online in January of 2015, the interim, let me stress the word interim president
Mm-hmm.
was General Carter Ham. And I forgot who the interim vice president was, but in the beginning, it was General Carter Ham, and I don't know if he still has that function and role now. I don't know, simply because I haven't heard anything more about it.
Yeah, isn't it funny how this was, talked about a lot. In fact, when in my early POTUS reports, this was talked about, but I don't know, it was reported on.
Yeah,
But I'm not, you know, I don't. I just know that it was reported. We just do an analysis of it, so we don't really. We're
yeah,
not the source of the reports. So.
yeah. Now this I mean, it's been so long ago I can't remember where I got it all from. But in any event, the first problem that they faced was funding. They didn't have any money, and they couldn't create any money because by that time the Basel III agreements had come into effect, and in order to do any kind of international trade with a currency, it had to be substance backed, and they didn't have any gold. Because, folks, there is not any gold at Fort Knox. The Bush faction already stole it all. It's gone. There's no gold in Fort Knox. Like my friend Keith Scott said one time, kind of in jest. He said if there's any gold in Fort Knox, he said I'll walk bare ass naked down New York Avenue. Now that would be
No,
a
I mean,
funny
but that's
sight.
funny that you're saying that because when Munchin, I believe when Munchin first, went in there, don't you remember that public announcement that he said he went and inspected Fort Knox and all the gold is there? He made that public statement. Now, was that a fake news report? I don't know, but
Well, if he said that, it had to be either in jest or an outright lie.
right, or it could have been a fake news report from somebody trying to
It could be.
just get that out, and because there's fake news, folks. I mean, even in the alternative community, just like they were saying that, Flynn admitted to lying. He never admitted to lying because he didn't lie. That was a fake news report. So, and so that just is an example, but go ahead. Yeah. The Fort Knox, you're right.
Yeah,
There's no gold. It's been a rumor for quite a long time. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we saw reports of it. I mean, I think the United States tried to pawn some of that gold off onto China, and they drilled into it and found out it wasn't gold; it was tungsten.
Uh-huh.
It was just gold plated.
That's the
And
one
so
Neil
Chinese
Keenan
would take
showed
it.
on the video.
Huh?
That's the one, your old buddy Neil Keenan. Sorry,
Oh,
not
gee.
a buddy of yours. I
Hey,
know.
buddy of mine.
Benjamin Fulford, I'm sorry to interrupt, but, Benjamin Fulford wrote a report stating that, that Neil Keenan was taken out and he was replaced by a double or something. I don't know. I'm just telling you what was reported. I
Yeah, I
don't,
ain't got anything to say about that.
yeah, I just, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I don't know what whether Benjamin's sources are all accurate or not. That's all I can say.
Maybe I don't. I mean, and the truth of the matter is, I don't really care.
Yeah, but
But anyway,
that was what that was kind of like a famous moment where he kind of put that on YouTube, where he thought these were gold bars he went into a bunker to get, but it wasn't. It was, I think, was it what you're talking about?
I don't know what I don't want to get off on all that kind of stuff. There's so much fake, foolish stuff going on with him, and he had to keep sensationalizing a bunch of lies and stuff so people would give him money.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm trying to focus on the fact that these bars were not gold, though, that they were made of something else. So it was because I know that the elder, it was reported that they set booby traps, and so there was fake stuff. But no. So well, let's keep moving.
Yeah. So with the new interim republic in place and starting to function, they had first off they had to be funded, and so at that point, now the reason I know about this is because of my Asian contacts, and the one who told it to me told it, for firsthand knowledge. He may have even participated in it. He didn't say. I didn't question. I mean, there's some things I just don't want to know about the particulars, even though I'm willing to listen to the story.
Gotcha. Better off not knowing some of these things.
Yeah. No.
I hear you.
Like I say, but anyway, but what he did tell me was that what he called the Chinese elders, and I don't like using that word Chinese. I'll just say the elders.
Okay.
Most of them are Chinese.
Elders, I mean, and they're like hundreds of years old.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
Some of the grandfathers are hundreds of years old, but these particular elders here, and it appears several of them are from Agartha. So again, they're not Chinese. It just, when you go to Agartha, you go down through Shambhala, which happens to be in China. Okay, so big deal. Anyway, the elders gave to the new interim republic 200 billion in gold bullion so that they could produce a currency that would comply with the Basel III international agreements. Now, the rumor is that gold did not go to Fort Knox, but is being held on an army base in Texas. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Haven't seen it. But I did believe my friend when he said that they gave him 200 billion in gold. To be perfectly honest, that's not a whole lot of gold. But apparently it was sufficient to start the creation of a currency which is known as Treasury Reserve Notes, TRNs. Now we know that this is the case because the TRN started trading internationally in the summer of 2015. And then because they had the Treasury Reserve Notes in place, that led to the creation of United States notes. And if you look on that article I wrote about the two-tiered money system, you'll see the value of those two separate entities, because now the government and the people don't need to compete for the supply of money. Exactly. Now the TRNs are for government functions, but government employees will be paid in what? United States notes, just like any other employee.
Right.
Yeah. So again, employees are people. So what kind of money would they be paid with? United States notes. Does that mean that the government is competing? No, they're paying in United States notes. Now, how will they obtain those United States notes to pay their employees and stuff? Well, that's being worked out. Let me put it that way. Now, so when Carter Ham, started to function as the interim president, he ran into a roadblock. The roadblock was General Martin Dempsey, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. who I referred to as a lapdog for Hillary.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I call him a lapdog was because after, I received that appointment from the Office of International Treasury Control, an
Mm-hmm.
attempt was made on the life of Dr. A.C. Dam.
Mm-hmm.
And once Hillary figured he was dead, he didn't die. But once she figured he was dead, she gave my appointment, as she supposed, to Martin Dempsey. How do I know that? I've talked to generals and colonels in the Pentagon who knew all about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I brought it up to this one general, he said, well, what's the date of your appointment? And I told him May the 26th, 2010. He said, yep, that's before Dempsey's. He knew all about it. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why I say Dempsey was a problem, because he was nothing but a lapdog for Hillary. So he had to be gotten rid of. And they did. They fired him. And in his place, in November 2015, they chose a General Dunford, Marine Corps general, to become the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So he's the one that's running the Pentagon. Now, what the relationship between Dunford and Carter Ham is, I don't know. Is Dunford now functioning as a president? He may be, because there was some at that time, back in those times, 2015, going into 2016.
Mm-hmm.
We saw a relationship between General Dunford and Paul Ryan
Mm-hmm. Right.
as the number 3 man in government, because he was the Speaker of the House. And since that time, certainly Ryan has shown his colors, and so he got the boot. He's going to retire for personal reasons,
Yeah.
so he could be with his family. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
So he showed his colors, and so he would give him the boot. So it what I'm trying to say is, in regards to the interim president, with Dunford in charge, was that function shifted
Mm-hmm.
to Donald Trump? You see what I mean?
Sure.
There's so darn many things in the background, that I just can't find the evidence of it.
Mm-hmm.
So is Donald Trump the functioning interim president that was created by the military? I don't know.
I think that there's a good probability that's the
There
case,
may be,
because
but I know for a fact that not Paul Ryan.
well, you know why? Because he's there to also deal with the bankruptcy. So then to
Yeah.
bring out the new notes, I think, because he's filed bankruptcy so many times, he's on that corporate level, to
Yeah.
dissolve the corporate U.S. government. And I don't know. So it's a good question, Winston. It's a good question, but
Well, I don't know. It's where we're at today. And so again, if you listen to Jerome Corsi, and
mm-hmm.
I believe that he's a truthful man, I don't have any reason to doubt what he said. He said he had knowledge
Yeah,
that a deal was struck between Trump and the military if they would not stage a military coup.
yeah.
He thought that he could get things set in order.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly he has surrounded himself with military people, which should be a key to how we look at things.
Well, that's supposedly, and who I always believed who Q is. Q is more of a position or office, I would
It
say,
very well could have been.
because I think it's not an individual. It was definitely it was always, I felt, the military brass around him, um, and it seemed like it was more of a position, and not just the military brass. I mean, we're talking higher up. Go as high as you can.
Well, I was talking to James Gilliland. Matter of fact, yesterday, when he was kind of joking about an interview he had done and put out.
Mm-hmm.
He said some number of years ago, I think the Pleiadians or somebody kept putting Q into his mind. Q kept coming in, Q, and he's saying, what's all this business about Q? They keep sticking in my brain over here, Then
Mm-hmm.
finally, when this QAnon thing come out, then he started to say, "Oh, okay, now I know what they were trying to tell me."
Right.
So again, people make a big deal about Q clearance and all that kind. I had a Q clearance.
Yeah,
I
Q
was a
clearance.
carpenter at the test site. I had a Q clearance. That don't mean nothing. The
Yeah,
Q clearance itself is only somewhere in between secret and top secret.
it's not the clearance. It's
It's the concept.
yeah, it has to do with actually. There's a
Yeah.
relationship between Q and some place in the Pleiades. Actually,
Yeah. So I can
I
guarantee
I
whoever
don't
this
know it off the top of
individual
my
is,
head, but I'm pretty sure there's a relationship.
it's not because he has a Q clearance that he
No,
can know all this stuff.
yeah, it's no big deal. Yeah.
Crying out loud, I was a carpenter at the Nevada test site and I had a Q clearance. What does that tell you about a Q clearance?
Hmm.
You know, if a dumb nail pounder can have one, see, so again, maybe that's keep people from knowing just how high up he's
Hmm.
actually operating at. But anyway, not getting into that.
Yeah.
Okay, now what I want to do is I want to back up a little bit, and that is I have spoken in the past about what we had done in 2012 as the officers in the Office of International Treasury Control, and also as the settler on the Sukarno Trust.
Mm.
We had created that commercial lien. We spoke up in the past, so I don't want to go back over it again. But we created a commercial lien against the 12 Federal Reserve banks in 2012, which prevented them from rechartering as a private central bank in 2013. Now that started a ripple. That started dominoes falling.
Hmm.
Now, in consequence of that and other things, they started. I forgot just exactly when it all started. Now, like I said, I lose track of dates, but they started in Reno.
Mm.
Why do you think they would take this operation to Reno?
Well, it's the new head of the Treasury.
That's the new United States interim government treasury.
Mm.
It's not an Indian reservation, folks.
Mm. Sovereign.
It's on sovereign soil, and also they have a free trade zone there, which makes it which facilitates what they're trying to do with the trading with the TRNs and all that stuff.
Okay.
But anyway, at the World Trade Center in Reno, they started operating representatives from here or there, wherever. I knew a little bit of it, and there was quite a bit of controversy and spitting and carrying on going on during that whole period of time. But the purpose for having that was they were starting to do a revaluation of currencies. Prior to that time, the value of a country's currency was determined by their central bank.
Mm.
And the central banks just simply fluctuated the currency so they could rape all the money out of the country, which they did.
Mm.
So this revaluation, what they did, they looked at every country as far as their natural resources, gross national product, and all these different kind of things to create a hierarchy or a list as to the relative value of a country's currency in relation to the others. That's what they did. And it took them about, I don't know, 2.5 or 3 years to get it all worked out. But once they set that, then the interference of the central banks or any banks in regards to a nation's currency
Mm.
could not be manipulated.
Mm.
And so, whether you like it or not, they did set up that stratum as far as the currencies and so forth. And some of the currencies benefited by it. Some of it lost a little bit.
Right.
For instance, such currencies as the Zimbabwe bonds, the Iraqi dinars, the Vietnamese dong, I think the Indian rupee,
Mm.
they all evaluated higher than they previously had been, which meant that their value was more than it had previously been
Mm.
in relationship to the other currencies of other countries. That's what they did. All right. Now, once that was set in place, then all of a sudden, another part of the plan came into focus.
Mm.
And that's what I've been talking about. And I think a lot of your listeners are very much aware of this, what we call the currency redemption. Many people have been investing in some of these currencies that I just named. That's one friend of mine. He's been investing in that stuff for about 6 years now. And I've talked to others, who have known about this. I mean, I have one friend that simply said, I'm taking and investing. I think he was investing in Iraqi dinar
Mm-hmm.
for his retirement.
Mm.
He was going to retire on the reason of the disease that he was holding and so forth. It was an expectation that he had.
Mm.
Now, the question again is, why is why are these currencies being redeemed at higher and higher prices? It's to infuse currency into the countries. The investors on a people level, I'm not talking about government level or banker level or any of that stuff, or friends and family crap I keep hearing about.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the reasons why this money is going to be redeemed and made available to people is for humanitarian purposes.
For humanity.
Yeah, for
Benefit.
humanity. Again, we're not having to compete with the government for the money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put the control of the money into the hands of the people, I can guarantee you they'll spend it. Everyone I've talked to who are involved in this says, yep, we got her, or we expect to have it, and we're just going to spend it, put it here. We're going to do this. We're going to do all these projects and all this kind of stuff. That's the only way it can happen. That's the only way it can happen. So is this a part of the master plan? The answer is yes, it is. But going back again, I've talked about in the past, and also I referred to it a little bit earlier about what Ayn Rand was talking about inherited wealth, or wealth that you didn't create.
Right.
That there are certain dangers that are associated with that. So we have to be very, very, very careful. But it's a necessary part of the program. It's a necessary function of the progress and result which we're looking for, which is no money. So people start talking about ascension and going into the fifth density or the fifth dimension, all these kind of things. Money don't exist there. And when we start going out into the stars and doing, commerce, in our solar system or in our galaxy or anything, they don't use money. They won't use money. It's something for something.
Mm.
It's barter. It's trade. Now, let me make a suggestion. And this will be a practical application for the listeners, so they can start to experience what we're talking about here. And that is, you can start, doing barter and stuff. But let's talk about starting to learn how to trade like the people in the stars do. So if you want to do, if you want to be a space traveler, if you want to be an ET to a different planet or something like that, you got to learn the techniques of trade and barter. So just with your neighbors, perhaps with your family, just make a deal with some of your neighbors. Well, I'll bake a cherry pie, and you can make up a great big batch of cookies, and we'll trade them. Or you make up a loaf of bread, and we won't exchange money. We'll trade it. And then you might say, well, I'll trade you babysitting if you for washing my dishes, just as an experiment, so that you learn how to trade value for value.
Right.
See, I learned this early on as a young boy, and that was my mother told me. Because as kids, we had to take turns washing the dishes. When it was your turn, you were on it. You were on to it. So my mother, as an incentive She said, I'll take your turn washing the dishes if you'll practice your piano.
Mm.
So my proficiency of piano playing was
Mm.
dependent on me getting out of washing the dishes. But I did learn how to trade something for something. See, there was no money exchange and nothing like that. And so I would think that if people want to start to learn how to deal with the extraterrestrials and how they carry on things, just start doing this. Go to your neighbor. Well, I'll change oil in your car if you'll come mow my grass. Not that you have to do that,
Mm.
but just for an experiment of how to get into those kinds of negotiations.
Right.
You see? And I think people would start to enjoy themselves because you have to be careful when you do that kind of thing not to put qualification on it. In other words, I'll babysit for 3 hours, in exchange for washing my dishes 3 times. No, let's be careful about introducing fictions into that.
Mm.
And so when you start to trade services or work or loaves of bread or whatever, be careful not to put a price tag on it and not to stick numbers to it, because when you do, you start to fictionalize what it is you're doing. So as an experiment, you know, in a no money transaction,
Mm.
maybe just go to
Goal.
your friends and neighbors and say, hey, let's trade, let's do something, let's trade labor. And so I'll come and wash your windows, if you'll come and wax my kitchen floor. See what I mean?
Mm.
And don't put any qualifiers on it, you know.
Right.
But learn how. And if you decide that was a good trade,
Mm.
then you'll do it again. If you decide it was a bad trade, you'll know next time how to negotiate. But that's how it's done. That's how it's done other places.
Yeah.
And if you want to do any kind of transactions with these people from other places, that's how you have to do it. They don't use money.
Mm.
So all this business about the money we're dealing with here
Mm.
is an interim step,
Mm.
which is a part of the interim republic that we're working to accomplish at this time. So anyway, that's pretty much what I had in mind to talk about a little bit about today. We have some current things that are going on, and I wanted to kind of build up to it so it make a little bit of sense what we're seeing.
Right.
Because when this finally the United States notes are announced and put into play, it's going to be a surprise to most people.
Mm.
It's going to be a big surprise. But to the listeners of these kind of programs, it's not going to be no surprise to you. But you need to be prepared to explain it to others. That's my point. So that's pretty much what I
Okay.
have for today. That's what I want to kind of go over a little bit,
All right.
and
Well,
that's about it.
that's very helpful, Winston. Thank you so much. You have put it into perspective. Once you're awake, you can't go back to sleep, folks. You can't. It
No.
can't. It doesn't work that way. Once you have this information, and I think you'll start seeing, you know, the other pieces of the puzzle come together for you.
Yeah.
And once they do, then you'll be okay to help somebody else understand things too. So sometimes you just need that other or that last piece of the puzzle or something to help tie it all together, connect the dots, and then, then you're on your way. And this helps a lot. And this is puts into perspective that as you appropriately shared with us the two-tier money system article that you wrote, what and why it's necessary. And so it really
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
A lot of people liked that, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's still on the Goldfish Report website. So I'm pretty sure
Well,
people
I can
will
send it to
access it
you
there.
again so you can put it. I'll send these other articles that I referred to here.
Right, we have a couple we're going to post in the description section of the video,
Yeah.
folks. That's where it's located. Exactly. No, it is on there. I know I posted it because I put the link on the in the description section of our
Yeah.
interview that time.
Uh-huh.
So, we have a lot of country roads up in our archive right now. So you can go there, you can visit. It's the official Goldfish Report archives. So please go there and check out your favorite country roads or your favorite Goldfish report, and subscribe so you can be notified uh, of our new posts. You can be notified of the progress that we're making to restore our archives, and you'll get all the information you're looking for there. So Winston, thank you. It was a great week. I hope your cough gets better. I hope you feel better there with that cough.
Yeah. Well,
But,
we'll see what happens. But on behalf of myself and many of our listeners, we certainly do appreciate the work that you're going to get these things, make them available to people. Like I say, you and I and several others have invested an immense amount of energy,
mhm,
and to have that just taken away from us and
mhm.
not being available to the people in general.
Right.
Hey, we used to have a saying, payback is a
Yeah, you
mm.
got it.
And
Exactly,
so
Winston.
so let me explain to the folks who listen to that. YouTube got a payback. So don't worry about it. I didn't do it. We had some things that happened, but there are consequences to actions. Let me put it that way. There are
Always.
consequences to actions.
Hmm.
And if your actions are good for the highest and best
Yeah.
good, then the consequences to you are good.
Hmm.
If you do things that injure other people, destroy opportunities, stuff like that, the consequences that come to you probably won't feel altogether that good.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
so steps have been taken. Steps have been taken uh, to uh, deal
Kick some
with
butt.
in, instant karma. Put it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. All right, Winston. Thank you. That was
Yeah.
absolutely. So that's the story, folks. And I can tell you that the reason I do this is because you know, there's no, greater, I guess, wish that I have than to see everybody, informed uh, about all this information. It's like, it's like you compelled. It's like you feel compelled to do this, and that's really, I don't know how else you could do it if you don't feel compelled. So you kind of know it's on your mission list, your life's mission list. So, but still, it's you have to keep the lights on. So we all work at this together. So thanks so much, Winston. Have a great weekend. And
Yeah.
yeah, how's it out there? It looks sunny. Is it warm?
Yeah. Actually, we have a little bit of clear sky today, so the sun came up. That's why I had to close the blinds here a minute ago
Yeah,
because
that was bright.
kind of ruined the picture we were trying to put out.
Yeah, like you were I was going to say something. I didn't know if it was a house light, or then I started realizing it was the sun, just the way it was positioned. But
Yeah,
the
I
sun,
have I have a window just on both sides of me here, kind of on a
right?
tree.
Yeah,
So once the sun gets up high enough, it don't have that direct
yeah.
impact. But when it first comes up right over this house next to us here, man, it comes right through.
Oh yeah, just blinding kind of.
Yeah,
Well, have a great weekend. Thank you for all of this wonderful wisdom, and I appreciate you sending those videos so we can post them for the viewers. And for everybody, we'll be back next week with our country roads in the beginning. I'm sorry, we will do that too. I meant we have our POTUS report on Monday. Um, and we're also going to have our country roads next week as well. And there's other interviews that are being scheduled as well, but I don't want to talk about them just yet because I haven't confirmed the dates and times for them yet. So in my book, they're not confirmed yet. But there will be some other very interesting interviews coming up soon. And I hope everybody has a really great weekend and that you enjoyed this report. Please subscribe to us on our YouTube channels and also on BitChute. And I did read the comments from viewers who are on BitChute, and they have definitely left YouTube, and they are very happy to see us on BitChute because they don't want to go back to YouTube. So like Winston said, karma's a bitch. So we will see where all this goes. So again, have a great weekend, and we'll see everybody next week. This concludes this edition of the Goldfish Report.